right, we have a very large crowd here, which I kind of knew we would, because this is a hot subject. I was a guardian. I am a guardian for 30 years and never got consistently good at daily billing. And Laura we were talking just before the presentation, and her comment was, yeah, it's mostly about habits and behavior. Yeah, well, this is a reminder of what that's about. So hi, everyone. I'm Teresa Barton. This is the peer group. As you all know, we do these presentations monthly with fantastic speakers on fantastic subjects, and all those subjects come from you guys. This exact subject came up multiple times over the last couple of weeks of people saying, I really need to get better at billing. How do I do that? And that's why we're here. So again, in the future, if there's other subjects you want and speakers and areas of education that you feel like you're missing, send them to me. Email, call me, text me, whatever, and I'll work on speakers for that. I'm now about halfway into 2026 for our speakers. All right, so give a few more minutes for people to get caught up. Make sure everybody gets in here. Kate, if you want to check Facebook to see if folks are lost or don't know how to get in. I don't have any texts and I don't have any emails saying we got lost souls. So, all right, because we have so many, we're not going to do the introduction. And also, I kind of don't want to clog up the chat with where everybody's from, even though I love hearing that, because I think the way we're going to have to do this is the questions, as you can come up, ask your question in chat as it comes into your mind, but we're probably going to answer them all at the end because we're afraid we're going to run out of time if we don't, especially if people get deep into a software question. So I think that's how we're going to handle it. All right, a few more minutes. It's 3:03. All right, we're just about ready to start. Okay. All right, that's about all the time we're giving folks. Okay, so I am introducing Laura. Laura is here because she works for SEM, which is a software for guardians, but she's here today to talk to us about the very subject of capturing it now, case notes, billing, mileage, whatever you're capturing. But she's here because she knows this stuff very well, having worked with guardians with the SEM organization for like 12 years. So that's why she's here helping us. So I think we're ready. Laura, if you're ready, are you ready to take the helm? Are you running it or is Kate?
Nope, I'm going to run it.
Perfect.
And so I'll advance it as we go. And I do welcome your questions. It does sound like we want to make sure that those go into chat. So please be sure and enter those there because the best presentations I've found are the ones where everybody's able to communicate, everybody's able to share ideas, thoughts, solutions, problems, so that we can learn from each other. And that's really what this presentation is about. It's a culmination of, 12 years of working with guardians, utilizing software, but truthfully, just working on the idea of, daily tracking for myself. I would tell you that I am probably one of the worst in terms of being sure that everything that needs to get recorded gets recorded. So I did a little bit of research for myself. So I've got some resources for you, some books I've read. We're going to talk about some behavioral, some habit forming ideas, and just really run the gamut. And we'll try to get through all of the material and leave enough time for us that we can then address all of the questions when we get to the end. So what do we want to do? We want to capture it now or know that we will lose it later. So we're talking about the habit of daily tracking. And when we talk about that, we do have objectives for this session. So I just want to reiterate that when you get to the end of this, it is my goal that you be able to identify the impacts of procrastination. And when I say procrastination, recognize that that's not necessarily meaning that you're choosing to do something later rather than now. Sometimes, honestly, it feels like that's a little bit out of our control. We don't record not because we choose to wait, but because life happens so quickly. We're in the middle of one thing when the next thing happens, and there's somebody waiting at the door and somebody waiting on the phone, and we're late for a meeting. So procrastination happens for lots of reasons, not always an intentional choice. But we also want to learn strategies and talk about some tools in general terms that can be used to help you in this regard of tracking more accurately and more timely. And then finally, what are the habit building methods that can help us streamline that workflow, reduce our stress, and really, at the end of the day, just improve Our habit tracking ideas. So let's agree at the beginning of our conversation that there are several problems or common pain points that arise when we don't track things on a timely basis. When we go through a day, or for some of us, if we're going to be honest, it might be several days that we go through, and then we sit down with our calendar and we think, oh, what did I do this week? I've got to get it into the system. And we're hoping that we remember. And the reality is, we don't remember everything. We are too busy, and life happens too fast. And so there can be missed or forgotten hours. There can be missed information and notes. There often can be billing delays and underpayments because we're not getting the hours into our systems. We're not getting billing out, or because we're having to put it in after the fact and we're spending so much time trying to find what we left out, then we're getting delays in our billing going out or our reporting. So it can affect our court deadlines. It can affect our ability to be compliant. Quite honestly, it can affect just our overall business. And probably most noticeable is that it can leave you feeling disorganized, frustrated, behind. And so maybe the biggest toll that it can have is just that kind of emotional, oppressive feeling of, I'm never on top of it. I've been doing this for so long and I still feel like I just don't quite have it figured out. So what can we do to fix that? And I think before we talk about fixing it, let's just take just a minute and talk about what we know what the pain points are, but what is the consequence of that? Because I want to be sure, you hear and you see people talk about what's your why. So I want to give you what's your why, because it's going to take some work and some effort to make sure that you get things into your system in a timely fashion. You're not just going to wake up tomorrow because you saw an amazing presentation today and go, oh, now I've got it. You're going to have to, it's going to be work. And I want you to know why you're doing it. So just a few of the things that could be your why, the hidden costs of procrastination or of not tracking daily or timely. I think obviously professional. There is a risk to your credibility and to audit exposure or any number of things. There is the personal side of it, which we talked about, but where I really want to focus, because it is the reality for most of us, this will be our why. It is the loss of billable hours. That is real money. That is revenue. So the reality is, and I did some math for you, that if you lose 15 hours per month, and you charge, let's just say, an average of $90 per hour, because I didn't know what everybody's rates might be. Did you realize that is $16,000 per month? Or sorry, not per month. My apologies, per annually. So, but that is, I mean, if you divide that out by months, that's over $1,000 a month. In fact, when you divide that out, 15 hours a month, you're like, oh, that's a lot. How would I miss that much? But that's just over 3 hours per week. That's 1 or 2 phone calls, 1 or 2 visits. And so 1 or 2 phone calls or 1 or 2 visits missed every week can total in an annual budget over $16,000. Imagine what you could do with $16,000 extra dollars. It is a really significant why. And it's why we would go through the work and the effort. It's why you're here today, I would suspect. And so what are we going to do about it? What are the benefits of tracking daily? So our benefits of tracking daily are going to be improved accuracy, stronger compliance, and being able to capture those details while everything is fresh. It is easier. Timely billing, it's reducing mental and financial stress. It's decreasing, and I use the term relearning and reducing what I would call like the Friday scramble. But that whole idea is I get to the end of whatever my week, or sometimes, honestly, I've worked with customers who are trying to do it at the end of a month, and they're trying to go through their calendar and remembering. You are having to go back and reorient yourself with every entry every day, or you have a call that comes up and you haven't gotten that information in, and you're challenged to make good decisions because you are trying to go from memory. Did we talk about that? Did we do that? What did we say about that? So there's a lot of relearning and scrambling that goes on when we're not getting things in a timely fashion. And ultimately, it's going to enhance our professional credibility. I didn't put them in the PowerPoint presentation, but I want to share a couple of statistics with you that I found interesting in relationship to, the benefits versus the cost of procrastination. Just freelancers and business professionals, which is what a large portion of you would consider yourselves, can lose up to $15,000 a year in missed billable time when hours are logged from memory instead of in real time. And that was actually from a time tracker study done in 2023. So the numbers that I showed you, the 16,200 for missing just those 15 hours, that's backed up by an actual time tracker study that was done across thousands of freelancers and small business professionals. Also, it is important to note that accuracy drops by almost 50% if entries are delayed just 2 to 3 days. So you're going to go from about 67% accuracy in detail down to 48 to 55%. And that it was another research study. That one was MEM time, but that was also a 2023. So the impact of not tracking and receiving the benefits is the opposite, is the cost. And I just wanted to point those statistics out, even though I didn't put them in the presentation, because I just think it underscores two things. One, the actual cost, and more importantly, how common this problem is, or we wouldn't have studies about it. So you are not alone. But there are a lot of folks that have given us suggestions for what we can do. So I want to take the easy side of it first. Tools and technology to increase our efficiency. So this part of it is I think, simpler. You can research technology options. You can implement technology options that have tools embedded in them that will help you to be able to track more efficiently. The habit side of it, which we're going to talk about in a minute, that's the harder side. So let's look at the easy piece and let's talk about some of the things that if you're going to contract or purchase or use some form of technology, just some generalities, some things you might look for. I can speak specifically to our software, and we do have, it's SEM applications. We have the EMS application, and I can tell you what we do. But truthfully, anytime you're looking at software, it is a good idea to research and to look at several options to see what's going to be the best fit for you. But you want to look for a software that has some type of task-based tracking. Ideally, you would want to be able to set up the system so that when you have a task or a calendar event, you can access that event or that task and then be able to put your case notes in linked to that task. That's going to give you better continuity. It's going to allow you to be able to know that you've documented each of the activities that you've had. So it's another way to ensure that nothing's gotten skipped or missed. You also want to look for software that offers quick entry screens, auto-populating templates, things within the software that will give you the ability to set up some foundational aspects of the software so that it's auto-populating common elements within those entries so that you don't have to manually key everything into the system. So can you design custom templates so that you can do faster data entry, or it auto-populates descriptions, or any part of the entry that would make it easier for you? Can you control the drop-down selection options for the way that you're categorizing or grouping the activities, which makes it better for billing and for being able to review those notes and go through those things to use them actively in your day-to-day practice? Can you duplicate options? Can you link entries together, create related entries? Our software has some options that I think could be really helpful. Again, can only speak to us. We have an expense bulk entry screen, which allows you to do a quick abbreviated entry for every action and then go back and fill in your more detailed case notes after the fact. So if life is getting too busy and it's just almost impossible to take 15 or 20 minutes to type a note in, you can at least get the core of the information in with the time and the description to give yourself a heads up when you get ready to go in and do the case notes, so you can put in those those key elements, save that, and then go back and expand at a later date. We've got templates that you can use for automating. Maybe you have activities that occur on a monthly basis, and instead of entering that every month, you can set that up as a template and it'll auto-populate and bring that charge in every month for you. Sometimes people will use that for things like maybe you've got like an administrative charge. So that's how you do a flat fee of 1 hour of time that covers all of your filing and, errands and maybe the cost of your software. And so that's a charge that's a fixed charge. You can set that up through a template to be able to auto-populate. We have rates that will auto-populate, and those rates can be auto-populated based on the category or the user or the client. So depending on how your billing rates are structured, those can be set up in the system so that things automatically calculate as soon as you enter your time. Then you can determine whether that's a billable or a no charge activity, and so you can control things from the user setup so that you don't have to manually create those numbers and enter those numbers each and every time. We've got review screens and summary screens so that you can go back and ensure that everything is in the system. If you worked 40 hours this week, when you hit the review screen and you look at the time that you've entered, it should total 40 hours. If it doesn't, something's been missed and you need to go back and capture that. There's bulk invoice creation in our system. There's payment tracking. So there's lots of options within EMS, but I think whatever software you're using, it's really a wise idea to look for these kinds of tools. And I say this because there are options for software, things like Excel or Word, that can allow you to track, but they don't go beyond just tracking with the abilities that I've described here, these things that increase your efficiency. And that's why I do recommend something that is built for time tracking, built for guardianship. And in many cases, what you gain in terms of accuracy in billing will offset the cost of those software options. And so that is something to consider. Also, not necessarily related to your software, but other things that you can try. If you are using a mobile phone, make sure that you can access your software tool from a mobile application or from a website on your mobile phone. Your phone gives you the ability to do talk to text. You should be able to activate that function on your phone and talk or speak your case notes into your software system. Now, I will say, we've all used talk to text, so we all know that Siri doesn't always hear things correctly. So you'll want to be sure that you reread and proof those notes before you send them out. But at least it gets it in the system. And for most of us, it is easier and faster to do that on the fly from a talk to text in a mobile application than it is to wait till I get back to the office and I can key it in. So if you can do that note sitting in your car, you're going to jot down your mileage, you're going to talk your note into your phone, and then you're going to drive to the next visit, you just increased the likelihood that you are going to be able to get information in a more timely fashion. And finally, some of us just need help on both sides. It's not just getting the information in, it's also staying on top of the responsibilities and activities that we have. So make sure that you've got a strong calendaring and activity reminder system, whether that's in, and again, go back to task-based tracking. So those two things would go together. So whether that's a part of your software or whether you're using Outlook or Google Phone or Google Calendar or whatever it is, make sure you have some way that you can record and note your activities and your times for your responsibilities, ideally to be linked back to your case notes. But if not, just to be able to keep organized. And so you've got that documentation for the time that you are entering, especially if you know you're not going to get to the point where you do everything as it happens. This is normally where I would stop to say, hey, what questions do you have? Because technology is, for some of us, a really kind of a hot button, and we really want to find a good program, or we want to know what's out there and available. I'll answer those questions at the end, so please put any of those in the chat. But I want to flip the coin just a little bit, and I want to talk not just about technology, but now I want to talk about the harder concept. So not hard to go find technology and get it started in your office. So much harder to change your behavior. And this is where the bulk of our conversation is going to be today. And I want you to know I do have a list of resources for you. So I pulled information from a lot of the books that I've been reading to try and help myself with this topic. So you'll see some quotes from Atomic Habits, and I've got a list of about 8 to 10 books that really are all about the development of habits, helping to manage time. You'll see that list, and it's in this PowerPoint presentation. But I want to focus in on just a few things that I think can be quickly and immediately helpful. And recognize that as you're thinking about changing habits, I wish that I could see you all so I could say, by show of hands, how many of you approach this almost in an all or nothing kind of a way? And yeah, I see Teresa's hand. You see my hand. That's how I think about it. And I just want to go on record right now saying it's not all or nothing. It is baby steps. And I'm going to give you some statistics in just a minute that are going to reinforce that. But I know that for years, I've felt like if I can't get everything in, then I get frustrated with myself and then I don't do anything. And I just stay in this cycle. Well, here's some ways to help us get out of that cycle. The first thing I want to talk about is habit stacking. So if any of you have read Atomic Habits by James Clear, this is going to be some familiar information. So I give him complete credit for what I'm saying, but it's logical. It makes sense. And by the way, his book goes through great detail to help you set up examples and to take it even a step farther. But the basics of habit stacking are that we want to attach or associate a new behavior, a new habit with an existing or current behavior. So we want to link some things together. So if I was going to say, you know what, I want to be sure that I'm getting all of my entries in, and I have a current habit. So maybe my current habit is I sit down at my computer and I open my email every morning. That's something I've gotten into. It's a part of my routine, and I know I respond to my email every morning. Then habit stacking looks like this. After I open my email each morning, I will review yesterday's time entries. So those two things are now linked or associated. When I do one, I automatically do the other. And if you stop and think about it, you probably do this in other areas of your life. For example, I have a medicine I have to take every morning. Guess where my medicine sits? It is right next to my toothbrush. Because I know I brush my teeth, I take my medicine. I have stacked those two habits together so that one is automatic. I never leave the house without brushing my teeth. So now because I brush my teeth every day without fail and I don't have to think about that, now my medicine sits there, I take my medicine, and now I don't have to think about that. Habit stacking. So here's another example. After a client call or visit, I'll spend 2 minutes entering my notes. So tie that back to technology. We just talked about the idea of using your phone to dictate that note. So I'm stacking those together. I get in the car, I track my mileage, I give my note in, and I drive to my next visit. So you're associating behaviors together. Last one I'll give you as an example. Before I log off every day, I'm going to spend 5 minutes reviewing tomorrow's tasks. So we talked about the importance of calendaring and setting up and knowing what I was going to do the next day. So there's another habit for you. It is a concentrated decision that you make to put these two things together. Now, it can happen naturally. Bad example, but a very honest example. Think about smoking. Now, that's not something any of us want to do, and we all know all the negative, but the reality is that what happens to a smoker? They go to a certain location, they have a drink, they eat a meal, and the association is there that they immediately want to pick up a cigarette. If they're not doing those things, they think less about picking up the cigarette. The smoking is associated with that behavior or that activity. So we want to turn that into a positive association by distinctly and intentionally building those habits together. So think about what you want. Think about what you're already doing, and think about where it makes sense to link those together. Habit stacking. Okay, next thing, 2-minute rule. So I alluded to that when I said after my client call, I'll spend 2 minutes doing this activity. So the 2-minute rule is pretty straightforward. Just do your small tasks immediately. So never postpone any task that takes less than 2 minutes. This applies for tracking information, but this applies in hundreds of other ways. So think about when you open that email. If it takes less than 2 minutes to shoot a response, do it now. Don't put it or flag it or put it in the save for later pile. You hear that with people when they deal with mail. We still get snail mail. I still get a lot of junk mail. If I lay it on the counter, then sometimes it doesn't get dealt with forever. So if it takes less than 2 minutes to do it, let's just go ahead and do it, because it will take us twice that time if we go back to visit it later, because we have to reread the email, or we have to revisit the calendar to see what the activity was, or we have to go through the process of thinking about what it was that we did while we were at that visit. Whereas if we walk out the door, sit down in the car, dictate the note, or key it in if we have a laptop with us, 2 minutes and we're done. And now we can move on. It's in the system, it's accurate, and we don't have to worry about it. So 2-minute rule. If it takes less than 2 minutes, do it now. Too fast. The other thing that you want to do is that you want to make sure that you're scheduling important activities. So if you had a meeting that you had to attend, you would set up a call or schedule for that call. If you had a doctor's appointment, you would block that time on your calendar. If you have anything that is important to you that you know you cannot miss, you would block it out on your calendar. Well, the reality is, while it doesn't always feel like it, note-taking and documentation, daily tracking should be that important. And you should be blocking out time on your calendar. Whether you do that daily or weekly, you need to put that on your calendar the same way you would any other responsibility that you have. Make it a meeting time. Make it 5 minutes before or after your lunch, 15 minutes at the end of the day, whatever fits in your schedule. But don't make it optional. If you block the time for it, do it. You wouldn't miss a meeting. You wouldn't miss a doctor's appointment just because something came up. So treat it the same way. Schedule your important activities. And if capturing that $16,000 annually is important, like I think it is, then tracking your notes has got to be important, and it's going to get its own calendared event. Daily, weekly, you choose, but get it on your calendar. And finally, and this is actually from Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. So that's kind of an old one. I went back a little bit, but it's still such a practical note. Focus on the important, not the urgent. And Covey does a great job of explaining 4 quadrants and how we work within those 4 quadrants of the important, the urgent. But I just want to focus on those 2 because I know guardianship. I'm not a guardian, but I have worked with guardians for long enough that we spend the vast majority of our time in the urgent, because that seems to be how things happen. When you get the call and this person is in crisis, that becomes urgent, and we lose track of the important. So you have to focus on the important, not just the urgent. If you are always responding to only the urgent, you will feel frustrated and beat up in the rest of your life because everything else feels like it gets set aside. So that is not to say that the urgent is not urgent, but we really have to do a better job of ascertaining what is truly urgent. That client who's in crisis, is that truly urgent? Or are they just, you've all heard that expression about the squeaky wheel. Are they just the squeaky wheel? Is this something that can be done later? Is it something that can be done by someone else? Is it something that even needs to be done? Certainly, does it need to be done now? And does it justify foregoing the important for the things that we feel in the moment are urgent? So I've got Covey's resource in the list, and I'll share that with you. Like I said, he does an excellent job of going through and helping us understand. But I think there are a lot of things that we do that we feel are urgent that maybe if we really examined them closely, we would say don't carry quite the urgency that we think they do. Now, again, in the world of guardianship, there is a ton of truly urgent. So I don't mean to suggest that we don't do what we need to do for our clients in an immediate way, but there is a balance here and we can find it. So those are some behavioral strategies. So here's the important part. Remember, I asked by show of hands what you thought if it's all or nothing, and it's not. So back to Atomic Habits. If you can get 1% better every day for a year, you will end up 37 times better by the time you're done at the end of the year. 1%, that's marginal. 1%, and you will end up 37 times better. So how does that happen? It's because small, consistent actions compound over time. So 5 minutes today prevents an hour of reconstruction later. Progress builds momentum, and momentum builds change. So small, consistent actions compound over time. But be warned, so does the opposite. Getting 1% worse every day also can compound. So if you let things get out of control, and if you continue to procrastinate for whatever the reason, you're going to find yourself feeling further and further behind. So small steps every day. So here's another reality check for you. So if you use some of the strategies that we talked about, whether that's technology and behavioral changes, a combination, if you take any one step forward, 1% better, if you make any movement in the right direction, if you gain 5 minutes of productive time per day, if you take 5 minutes that you use better today than you used yesterday, you'll gain 25 minutes per week and 22 hours of time per year. So you can see how it adds up. Same thing is true. If you lose that 5 minutes today and tomorrow and the next day, then you're ultimately losing 22 hours per year. It doesn't take a very big change to see a cumulative big result. So it's simple. Instead of thinking all or nothing, think, how am I going to spend that 5 minutes today? That's all we're worried in. 24 hours in the day, we're worried about 5 minutes. How are you going to spend that 5 minutes? What little change are you going to make today that's going to have a big impact down the road? Okay? So you've got some strategies. You've got some technology information. So how about some practical tips? Okay? And in some ways, this kind of repeats what we've said, but hopefully it's going to bring it down into something that becomes actionable, because that's really what we want to have you do. We're looking for actionable tips. So use cues and reminders, phone alerts, system notifications, scheduled blocks of time, and make them realistic. I think that's another thing that we do to ourselves, or I guess I could tell you that I'm speaking from myself. So I decided I was going to get into an exercise routine, something I've not done very well. And so instead of planning realistically, I'm going to get to the gym twice a week. Nope, I decided I was going to get to the gym 5 days per week. Okay, maybe, but probably not. So let's make these realistic. Let's set some things. So if you're blocking out time and you struggle to get in 5 minutes of time, don't block an hour and a half to put your case notes in. Block 15 minutes. Do what you can do in that 15 minutes and take advantage of some of the technologies that can help you do things faster, and use 15 minutes, because that you'll stick to. And the key to this is consistency. You'll see that in some of the things that we talk about. It really is about consistency. So use cues, reminders, and scheduled time blocks when you can. Here's another thought, and I don't know, some of you have coworkers and colleagues. Some of you have, larger staffs and teams. Is there a way that you can work together? Find an accountability partner. Crazy as it sounds, we will have accountability partners for weight loss. We will have accountability partners for all kinds of things. But the reality is We can have accountability partners for this as well. So somebody that can just, call you out if you are notoriously not taking those scheduled blocks and using them like you should. Somebody that can ask you, hey, how is it going? Somebody that you can brainstorm with and say, hey, what habits have worked well for you? What stacking did you do that you were successful with? And I think guardians, probably more than a lot of other fields that I've been involved with in my career, guardians are really good about networking and working together and relying on one another. And I think this is a logical solution for many of you because you guys are really great about going to each other for solutions. So find out what's working for somebody else. Goodness knows you don't have to recreate the wheel. You don't have to have something uniquely you. If it's working for somebody else, copy it. That is do what works. And so find some partners or some teams, have some check-ins, just a way to gauge how successful you're being, or more importantly, how consistent you're being. Now, if there was any one thing that I would say was new to me when I started reading Atomic Habits, it was the idea of creating systems, not goals. Because I tend to think in terms of goals. But when you look at what a goal is the result you want to achieve. So my goal might be, I want to increase my revenue. Well, that's a terrific goal, but it doesn't tell me anything about how I'm going to get there. So systems are about the steps that will get you there. So when you think about this idea of habits for daily tracking, we don't just want goals. We know what the goal is. The goal is I want to get my stuff in the system so I can bill, so I can increase my revenue. We know the goal. What we don't have are the systems or the steps. So that's what we want to create. So here's some suggestions or some ideas just to get you thinking. I want to increase my revenue. That's my goal. So what am I going to do? That's my system question. So your system might be, I schedule 15 minutes each morning to log my billable time before I open my email or immediately after I open my email. So now I know I want to increase my revenue. The only way to do that is to get my information in the system into whatever system I'm tracking it in. And so my action steps are scheduling 15 minutes to get the work done. Here's another option. I want to enter my notes daily. Great goal. Fantastic goal. What we're all talking about, the goal of this presentation. But how do we do that? So I am going to add update notes to my end of day checklist before I log off. So I'm going to use 15 minutes at the end of my day to update, review, check my notes, and ensure if I worked 8 hours today, I've logged 8 hours. That's going to be the last thing I do. Update notes. That's part of my end of the day checklist. I want to stay caught up on billing. That's my goal. My system is I will review all of my entries at 2 p.m. on Friday. So every Friday, I'm going to block however time I think I need, 30 minutes, 20 minutes, half an hour, and I'm going to review all of my notes and ensure that I have 40 hours documented, that everything is in the system. But I'm going to set that up in my calendar as a regular reoccurring task, the same way I would a regular reoccurring meeting. Because I know I want to stay caught up, the only way to do that is to block out time. So I'm setting it 2 o'clock every Friday. So you can see the difference. A goal will tell you where you want to be, but not how to get there. And a system gives you the action steps to take to ensure you reach that goal. So be sure that you're finding systems, not just goals. And finally, find motivation in your success and your failures. So you can celebrate your wins. So every time you stick to it, every time you get to Friday and you've reviewed those notes, or you get to the end of the day and you can see 8 hours documented in the system, celebrate that. Congratulations. That's a great job. But the days that you don't, take a look and see what happened. Find out, okay, what went wrong today that caused me to not meet my expectation. Tweak it, change it. Maybe the habits that you tried to stack together, maybe the initial habit wasn't strong enough. Maybe you tied the new habit to something that wasn't completely well-formed habit. So now anytime you miss habit one, you automatically miss habit two. That means I just need to stack a different habit. Maybe you blocked time out, but without realizing it, you blocked it on a day or a time when other things consistently happen and you find yourself having to cancel it. Change the date. So use what you learn when you fail in order to change and improve for the next day. And if I go back to what I learned in Atomic Habits, the one thing is consistency. So if I fail today, I don't worry about it. I learn from my mistake and I move on. I just try my best not to fail twice, or at least not to fail for the same reason twice, because I'm always improving. I'm always growing. I'm working toward consistency, not perfection. Sometimes life is going to just get in the way, and our best laid plans are going to just get blown up. And we can't let that derail us. So we have to get rid of the all or nothing thinking. Because if we go a day and we goof, and so then the next day it's harder, and the next day it's harder, and we feel like we're starting over, you're not starting over. You're refining. And you're building 1% habits, 1% of change, and you're cumulatively seeing those big changes come over time. So remember, success is built on repetition, not intensity. All right. That brings me to the end of what I have to say to you today, but I want to reiterate a couple of things so that we've got the finer points and key takeaways. So I tied these back to our overall objectives that we talked about in the beginning. So if we talk about the impact of procrastination, we know that delays cost more than time. I mean, financially, they have an impact. So we've got reason to want to make a change. 5 minutes today can prevent an hour of reconstruction later and can save us thousands of dollars in lost revenue. So what were the strategies that we have to pull from? There's technology, and we talked about several things that are important. There's also the behavioral strategies that we looked at. But most importantly, let's just recognize how to put first things first. Figure out what's important, not just urgent, and recognize that daily tracking has to be in that proactive zone. We have to start changing how we view that. It is not an afterthought. It is central to our success. So give it the importance it needs so that you will follow through with the scheduling. And then we're just going to do that. We're going to schedule. We're going to make sure we have tasks and reminders and alerts and scheduled activities so that we can find the time that we don't think is there because we're trying to go with the flow. And sometimes you need to stop the flow and you need to set the course. And then we can obviously use technology to help simplify the environment. The fewer barriers that there are, the fewer excuses that we will have. So if you have barriers that are technologically related, I don't have access to my computer, I don't have a program that I can access on my phone, let's remove those barriers where we can. And let's put systems in place rather than just goals so that we can move forward. And then finally, that's what we're talking about, how and what is going to make sense for you. So we want to create repeatable processes. I'm going to update my notes before lunch. Well, that only works if you have consistent lunch every day. And again, by show of hands, I think we could quickly see that maybe building lunch and notes together is not going to work. So what is going to work? Set yourself up for success by picking systems, putting systems in place that work for you. Honestly, I don't know when the last time I had a lunch in a consistent time frame was, but I almost always start my mornings in the same way. So I'm going to tie things to my morning activities. quite honestly, the end of my day has a lot of similarity to it. I go through the same steps on my computer when I close things down and I end things for the day. That would be a great time for me to put in a stackable habit to do something else, one small thing that I could do at the end of each day. Because what I'm trying to do is 1% improvements. That's my mindset. It's not solving every problem and being perfect tomorrow. It is small, consistent action so that I can see change and progress over time. And I'm celebrating any time that I'm consistent, because progress matters so much more than perfection. And I think we're guilty of wanting perfection. We're professionals in our industry, and we just really believe that we should be able to get it all done. And we need to have grace with ourselves, and we need to recognize that progress is how we measure our success, not perfection. And put things in place, but give yourself grace. Then I told you I had some recommended resources for you, so I've got those. There are, I think, 8 different books that I've given little synopsis so you can kind of know what they're about, because I know how much extra time all of you have, and you're going to be ready to run out and grab a book and sit down and read. But I will say audiobooks are great for me. I have quite a bit of drive time and travel time to and from work every day, and these kinds of books work really well in audio for me. I was really a fan of Atomic Habits. I think you can tell that. I liked Eat That Frog really well, but all of these books have great information. And so you can have that as a resource or a reference for later. But I want you to stop and just think for a second as we get into kind of our Q&A here at the end. What is procrastination costing you? What is the impact to you? Because once again, this has to be your why. And just because I say it can cost you this many dollars, what is it costing you? Because maybe the why for you isn't the financial consideration. Maybe it's the feeling of frustration and discouragement or the burnout in your job. And that's what you need to alleviate. That's what you're working for. That's your why. And so you make sure that your systems address your why. And then the only other question that I would ask you today is, what is one small change that you could make today? What's something you can start today? Because if you spend time thinking, oh, I have to have this really amazing plan, then you won't take a step forward. You don't need a plan. You need one small action step. So what is it for you today? What's your why? And what are you going to do about it?
Okay, Laura. Oh my goodness, you hit like 1,000 bells in my head. All right, so we've got a couple questions
Okay.
in the chat, but also people might want to actually orally ask a question.
Sure.
One thing I want you to do, and Laura, we didn't talk about this, but do you have an ability just to show your sim dashboard for a second, just so people can get a visual? Is that
Sure.
possible?
Yeah,
Okay.
I
I just,
absolutely do. Give
yeah.
me just a second and
Yeah,
I
because we
will
didn't really
pull that
talk
up.
about that. But as we're going, I'm thinking, well, people ought to see what this version looks like. And again, part of the point here is this is not a sales pitch for Sim. It is a sales pitch for a system, a process, and you find out which one it is for you. But Sim is one that a lot of guardians use. So that's why I had Laura come and speak. We've got more comments coming up. While those comments are coming up and while Laura is getting her dashboard up so we can get a visual, I want to talk about some successes, because for me, billing is so frustrating. I really want to talk about a success. I'm not great at technology necessarily. And I will say that about 3 months ago, I learned how to use Google Maps timeline. It is, first of all, absolute disclaimer, extremely easy tech. Okay. No learning required, no cost. The biggest difficulty is it will use up some of your battery in your cell phone because it tracks you wherever you are. Whether I'm in my car or I'm in a client's car or I'm in my husband's truck, my phone is going to be with me. So I have an Android and I don't know how Apple works, and I apologize that I don't know that. But if you ever want to try Google Maps, you turn the timeline toggle on, and it basically becomes the FBI of where you are every minute of every day, 24/7. And I go back, check my billing. What time did I leave yesterday? I thought I left around 9:30. No, I actually didn't. I left at 9:05. That's the whole point of this. Trying to go off of memory doesn't really work. So whenever you can use technology, consider using Google Maps timeline. It's very easy to get to. It's very easy to use. What I haven't learned how to do yet, Laura, is I want to learn how to figure it out if I can make it print reports. That I haven't learned how to do, because then I could prove what it did, if I needed to prove from an audit point of view of where I was, I could do that. All right. So that's my one little success I want to talk about, because we need successes in billing. All right. So Laura's going to take just 5 minutes to just show us the visual of this software. We're not selling her software. We're showing you the concept of why you choose one or the other. Go ahead, Laura.
Okay, so what you see on the screen now is our dashboard. Now, this is great for making sure that you have everything and easy to view, and it's customizable by individual user. So I have it set up to show me accounts that are maturing. If I scroll down, I can see pie charts and bar graphs for a distribution of my client load. I can click to access individual clients that are assigned to different managers. If I have a larger organization, I can go in and see the automatic transactions that were generated, or what's happening with checks in my check queue that I'm getting ready to process to the printer. So this screen, one of the things guardianship wise that's really nice is I have a report that shows me any client that's over resourced for Medicaid funding. So balance warning oriented. So this dashboard just allows you to have at a glance information specific to our conversation today, where we're talking about tracking for data and billing. Really, the tools that are in EMS that are going to be helpful for that would be underneath our time and expense menu. And they're going to begin with the ability to enter and to track all of our billing on a single screen. So whether we're looking at the billable side, which is the time that we took, or whether we're looking at the full case note that we read, we can look at this information, see everything on screen. It's all filterable by specific categories. We can filter by staff members. We can show summations of billing information. So this is just a way to ensure that you get it into the system. Everything is entered from a single screen. So this is going to capture the client and the date. It's going to capture the billing part of the information, which can be a time quantity, an expense quantity, or an expense amount. It's going to be set up so that our rates populate automatically. We can have default descriptions that are associated with individual categories, so that when I select a category, something populates automatically. These are the automated processes that I was talking about, and then your full 6,000 character case note field, so that when I save these entries, I have everything in my system. I also have the ability to save related expenditures at the same time. So I went for a client visit, I documented that, I click the related expense tab, and I document my mileage. So now both entries are recorded with a single click, and I've saved them both. I can duplicate entries, I can distribute some things across multiple clients. So there's a number of different ways that this can be formatted in order to work for you. Then when it comes time to review those notes, I can go to the case note screen. I'm no longer worried about how much I billed. I'm now interested in what I did, so that I have the ability to make good decisions moving forward for my client. So I can use those same filters to say, I want to drill down to notes where I talked about this medication or this process or met with that person. So I can pull for a range of time and not scroll through every note, but say, capture or bring up or filter by just this person's name, or just this staff member, or just in this category. So it gives you the ability not only to record the notes, but to make them usable so that you can better make decisions for your clients. I mentioned the ability to review information. So View All Expenses does that. So here, it's not one client at a time. I'm looking within a date range that I've selected at every entry that I've put in the system. So if I know in a week's time I should have billed 40 hours, I can take a look and say, here's every entry, and I can review it to see if there's any mistakes. Typos happen. Maybe I put in 25 instead of 0.25, and so I have an entry that's considerably out of balance, I can make that correction directly from this screen. But more importantly, I have the summary of information. So I can see within the date range that I've selected, I have an expense quantity, I have a total time, so 103 hours. So if that was in 1 week, I worked really hard. In this case, I think I have a much broader date range, but I can see what my anticipated revenue is going to be. I can see exactly what was no charge versus what was billable. And so I have at a glance information that's going to help me. And then I can turn around and turn this into invoices or billable documents for my individual clients. And I can do that manually, one client at a time. I can do that based on date range. I can do that based on doing invoices for a client and then having the system generate those invoices for me. So there's a number of different ways that I can determine how to do reporting out of the system. But it's not the reporting out that we're struggling with. It's the getting in that's the problem. So the single entry screen is helpful. I have a task manager in the system that allows me to set up an activity. So I need to do a home visit for an initial assessment. So I see that that activity is scheduled. I can actually link my notes or open that case note and time tracking window right from this task. So it's a prompt to me to say, can't complete this task. I can't mark it as done because I haven't put my case notes in yet. So it's just another way to make sure that you've reminded yourself. And then I mentioned that we have the ability to do expense bulk entry or to do those rapid entries that we can go back later and add to. So expense bulk entry looks a lot like an Excel spreadsheet, doesn't it? I'll expand that. So here I can say, well, my first client was Candy Apple. This was the category for my activity. This is what I did, and it took me 20 minutes. Then the next one I did was Arizona, and this was what I did for her, and this was the description, and this was the time. When I save that, I've got quick reference, but if you look at the bottom of the screen, each of those now, this is the last 30 expenses that I entered, so the last 30 items that I put in, but now I can go in and edit that and say, okay, well, originally I didn't have the time to do anything more than the basic description, but now I want to go in and add my notes. So it's another prompt. It's just another tool to help you to be sure that you're not leaving billable hours on the table.
Okay, Laura, so let's have a conversation here. As a new guardian, I get a call probably every week and a half in the peer group saying, hey, I need to figure out how I'm going to do this. And I'm starting out with a yellow pad, and I use Excel, and I use QuickBooks, and I use Outlook, and so one of the problems that we experience now that we didn't used to have is the many places of technology that are now not talking to each other well. Mm-hmm. So for example, when I'm doing my billing, one of my problems, back to Laura, she's got us pegged like a pegboard. Jesus, you exactly know what I do, all or nothing. So for example, I have a hard time billing my emails if I don't have both the sent and the reply. So I sent it on Thursday, which by the way, was the 30th of the month. They replied on Saturday, which is now the 1st or 2nd of the month. And if I want to try to bill that as a concentrated conversation, because it's exactly what it is, I want to wait until that second piece comes in. We struggle with that a lot. Mm-hmm. We haven't really come up with a bunch of answers. All right, hold on. Before I keep going about my stuff, there's questions and stuff out here. So I'm going to pop up chat and we'll go back to the beginning. So one question was, how can I get actual Zoom court time? That was from Linda. That's an interesting question, Linda, because I don't know. I know when you're the one setting up Zoom, you can get it to kick you back a report. But when you're joining a Zoom for court, I don't think they'll kick you back any report. If anybody's got a great response to that, I don't know one. Then we've got a question of Valerie says, any recommendation of apps to use to dictate your notes at the end of the day? So Valerie, the first question is, which phone are you using? Because that'll determine maybe which of those apps. There's lots of them. And it's really a matter of, okay, getting it dictated is one step. Getting it dictated and in the place it needs to go is where this gets dicey, because if you're using a software like SIM, it has to be a way that it can speak to SIM. Laura,
And
can you speak
what
on
will
that?
what will happen in EMS? So our software is that you will actually log into the software on your phone. You will go to the client. You will open the time and expense window just like you would if you were going to key it in. And I'll just pop it open so that you can see. And what you're going to do is you are going to then open it. You'll put your cursor with your finger, just tap it so that it activates that cell. And then on your phone, you'll hit your little microphone button. And then you'll be able to talk. And because your cursor has activated that box, it will appear in the note for this client.
Perfect. And I want Laura to explain that, because my favorite way to get my case notes in is in the parking lot of the facility. So I'm in the parking lot. I know people will tell you not to sit in a parking lot. I've heard that. I lock my door. I always park. It's habit. I always park as much as I can backed in so I can get out. That's just a habit I have. So now I'm putting my cursor on that place, because even if you saved your notes orally onto some kind of app in your phone, it will then have to dump that into the field if you're using a software, and that won't exactly work. So it's opposite. You have to turn the software on, open up the field it's going to drop into, and then start talking.
Yeah.
Okay.
The other option, if you prefer to do it differently, is that you can open the Notes app on your phone. If you do that, it's more steps, because then you would need to email that information from your Notes app to yourself. Then you would need to copy and paste out of the email and paste it into EMS. So it's not a succinct connection, but it is certainly possible if you don't have access or any other tools in order to be able to do that. It's better to take a few more steps, because that's less time than trying to recreate it all 2 days or 3 days later when you get back to wherever your software is. So use your Notes app on your phone, and you can date it, you can timestamp it, you can put everything that you need in that, and then you can either pull that up and key it in when you get back to your office, or you can go through the steps of emailing it and then copying and pasting it out of your email. So for me, that dictation and using that would be probably something I would strongly recommend.
Yes.
There are, if you Google it though, again, I don't know what software tools you're using for the rest of your tracking. The idea is to try to get as many of your elements of your client information in one location, so that you're not duplicating across multiple tools. So if you're doing your billing and notes in one, and your accounting in another, and this kind of tracking in Excel, and this you're doing in Word, then you are recreating or duplicating a lot of your work. So a software like EMS will allow you to capture everything in one place. We do accounting, we do medical management, we do case management, we do billing, we do case notes, we do time tracking, we do calendaring. It's all here in one place. So you have a centralized client record, and then you have all of the information, everything up and including your guardianship reports, your accounting reports for the court. So there are some advantages to software that is guardian or industry specific, but it is certainly possible to do things in a variety of different kinds of tools, but you have a little bit more work to manage those to make sure that there's consistency within all of the programs that you're using. But if you Google dictation software, you'll find all kinds of options.
And many kinds of apps as well.
Yes.
Both.
Yes, there's all kinds.
Okay, so Robin has a question. Robin, I'm even though this is a good question, Laura, I don't want you to get into the weeds with this. I'm just going to say it. Laura, we've been using SEM for 15 years, and you know how much we appreciate you. I do have a question though. It's a billing and invoicing feature. Is there a feature that we can scan check for duplicate entries? I love that idea. As an alternative, can the billing data, invoice number 14, for example, be exported into Excel for proofing? Laura, you're going to talk to Robin about that personally, because that's too much detail for us for today. But Robin, that's a great question. Okay, so next question.
That is Robin.
Hey, Robin.
That Robin Seamaster, right?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yes. We have a couple of Robins, so I just wanted to check.
Right. I know. Okay. Simone says, and I know the answer to this, but you go ahead and answer it, Laura. Can each client have their own file?
Absolutely.
Of course. All right.
That
Okay.
is the design, in fact. Not only can they, but they must.
They must. It
So
doesn't, yeah, can't mix them. Okay. And then Simone says, can you link your notes to your email so it's stored under your email, but still under notes? I'm not sure how to answer that, Simone. You following that, Laura?
So if I understood the correction, we do not we do not connect with email programs. So the email would need to be copied and pasted into the system, into the client record. Now you can, depending on what email program you use, you can save an email in the system and you can send an email out, but the emails don't automatically port into or appear as comments or case notes in the system. So that would be a copy paste. So I hope that answered your question. If not, on my final slide, you'll see an email address and a web address and a phone number. So I would love to have you send me an email, get in touch with me, and give me more details about what your question really was, and we'll try to address it that way.
All right. So we've got some thank yous. Laura, great presentation, great presentation. Of course, 2 people are asking cost and is training available. And so, Laura, you get like 2 minutes to give everybody the short version of your sales pitch because we can't get too deep into that.
Yeah, absolutely. So the cost is dependent on how you're going to be using it. So we have a rep payee version, we have a guardian only version, and we have what we would consider to be kind of our full version. Cost is going to range anywhere from, and I'm giving you just some average numbers. There are some discounts and things that can sometimes be applicable, but basically you're talking for a limited version about $4 per case per month up to, for the full version, $6 per case per month. Now, don't forget there are volume discounts based on client size and other things that I can't speak to at the moment. That is an all-inclusive number. So that is ongoing technical support. That is everything that you need to get started. The only expense that you might have that honestly that we would recommend might be an onboarding process or an implementation. So depending on how you wanted to import data into the system, whether you're going to do that through manual entry, whether you have 500 cases and we need to import all of that data in, there could be some cost associated with import or implementation. So your initial training for an individual user, you get a couple of hours included at no charge, or you can purchase an implementation package. I think they start somewhere around 600-ish, and that's several hours of one-on-one training for customization and setup. So, but the ongoing subscription cost, that I'll just say $6 per month for anybody that's less than, say, 50 customers. That's going to include all of your ongoing tech support and some online training options that are ongoing also, access to the user manuals, all of that. So there's no additional costs or fees other than that subscription.
Okay, so Jackie has a question. Jacqueline, I think, has a question. Can we save other documents, legal, etc., within the system?
Yes. There is a way to upload that into the system. There is also some options if you're using some outside, like maybe you've got Office 365 or SharePoint or some other cloud-based storage that you're using now. There are some options to be able to use a URL and link to that document storage solution so that you can see information in your existing storage solution while you're working in EMS.
Okay. All right. And then Greg says HIPAA compliant.
And we are.
Awesome. Awesome. Okay. All right. So I want to go back and talk about another success I've had. And the reason why I'm talking about these is because for me personally, billing has been, I did guardianship for 30 years. And I can tell you the only bad thing about guardianship was billing. I love the work, still love the work. So one of my frustrations was the many places that I have potential things to catch billing on. I have an email list, a spreadsheet list, and I'm just going to read it real quick so you can understand what I'm talking about. My Guardian Care Outlook going sent. My Guardian Care Outlook inbox, that's my company email. I run 3 programs for Aged. One of them is called CHG, one of them is called Peer, one of them is called GSI. Each of those has their own email address sent and coming back. Then I have Google Map, which I've now learned timeline is magical. Please look it up and try it. It's magical, and I am not good at tech. Then I have my phone call, my cell phone call history, which I get a vast amount of my billing from. Then I get my cell phone voicemail. Then I have my cell phone text. Then I have my actual calendar, my Outlook calendar. Then on top of that, I have photos. I always check my Google photo pile, because if I took photos at the case, at the house, at the property, with the client, it tends to make me remember things that I might not have remembered. Then I have my draft folder, because I am notorious for putting an email, starting it, putting it in the draft folder. Some other urgent scene comes up and I don't get back to draft. I'm telling you that because that list is what my spreadsheet is now, to make sure, did I check all 12 of those places for my billing? This is where the new technology that we're in has made things much harder than it used to be. We had a landline and a yellow pad. Okay. We didn't have the 15 places we have now. So learning that has been a struggle for me. Okay. Quick other question, which is very funny. What percentage of your 8-hour workday is spent on timekeeping tasks? Jacqueline, Laura, I'm sure that's not an answer that can be consistent because everybody is different, but the better you get at it, the less it is.
That's true, but I will tell you, we do have a solution for that for people who have to document the full 8 hours or who want to understand how their time is being spent. And that is to create an administrative client in the system. And for anything that cannot be billed
Perfect.
to a specific client, you're going to
Perfect.
bill into this administrative client, and you're going to categorize those in different categories. It's going to be meetings. It's going to be, prep work. It's going to be, whatever your time that is not client billable, however you're spending it in those big kind of overarching categories. You're going to have 3 or 4 different categories. You're going to bill those to that client, because you really, at the end of the day, want to narrow that down. When you think in terms of time management and how that impacts your bottom line, if you're spending more than 50% of your day and you're doing things that you can't bill to a client, you probably ought to be taking a look at how you're spending your time, because we really need to be billing, client billing, at least, I would say, 66 to 70% of our time to a client. So we need to know where we land so that we can adjust and address that, because I think meetings do call us. And so sometimes it's a matter of even saying, all right, in that meeting, which clients did that meeting impact? Because I could bill some of that time to a client if what I discussed in that meeting has a direct and relevant impact to that client. And that's where things like the duplicate feature that we have. So I was in an hour in this meeting, and I have with a nursing home, and I have 4 clients in that nursing home.
Yes,
I can bill that hour 25% to each client, and now I've billed that hour instead of eating that hour, because I still spent that time, and I wouldn't have done it if it didn't have some impact on my clients. So being able to manage that information in terms of a time study is really helpful.
And that's such a good thing to talk about. So let's talk about how many people on this call are a one-man show. And I remember when I was trying to decide what software to go with in 1993. I was trying to decide what software to go with. I was really struggling because it was me and one office staff person. That's it. I had one employee. A lot of new guardians, I'll hear them say, yeah, but I don't need all that stuff. What is interesting about having the right software, whether it's this one or another one, is as you grow, it allows you to grow. If you don't have, think about it like a house. If you've got a 1-bedroom, 1-bath house, the ability to have multiple children is going to be tough. You can't really fit them in there. If you start out as I don't need software. I'm going to do Excel, and I'm going to do a yellow pad, and I'm going to do handmade bookkeeping. It does kind of work when you're a one-man show and there's none other staff involved to a point, but it also puts you in a corner. You can't grow. And what will happen is, what almost always happens is, you end up with a call from one of your favorite attorneys, and he's got 3 cases all out of nowhere, all good paying cases. You want to take them, and then your brain goes, oh my God, if I take these, how am I going to track anything? And then you're saying, okay, now I got to get software. And you're kind of behind the horse out of the barn at that point. So as a new guardian, I think you really need to consider, if not this, a system, find one. And from my perspective, the more inclusive it is, the better, because honestly, this is breaks the rule my grandma teaches, which is don't keep all your eggs in one basket. This is the one rule that breaks that. I do want all my eggs in one basket because I want to be able to know what's her brother's phone number of the ward in the same place that I know who's her primary PCP doctor, to the information of what address did she live at 2 years ago. It's very hard to do. And this is, if you guys will hear the word, you'll hear somebody say CRM, and they'll talk about relational databases. And that's what this kind of is, meaning that every bit of information about that ward, whether it is financial, property, health, medical, legal, taxes, is kind of held in one place. It's really the only practical way to do this, is my opinion. That's how I did it. I chose a software, did the same software, which, by the way, it's not even in existence anymore. It's a Tyrannosaurus Rex, so don't worry about it. It's Time Matters, it's gone. But I used it for 28 years. All right, so I want to make sure we answered all the questions. Does anybody want to ask a verbal question? They can raise their hand and ask Laura for a verbal question. I'm fine with that. If you want to, come off of mute and start talking, or wave your little yellow hand.
While we're waiting to see if anybody has any questions, I will say, I don't know how many of you are going to be at NGA this weekend, but we will be there at NGA. So if you have any questions about the presentation, if you want to talk about some of the books and resources, if you want to learn more about the software, if you just want to come by and say hello, myself and one of my coworkers will be there. We've got a game planned for it, and we've got materials and information. We can walk you through the software, answer any software-specific questions that you have, but we would just love to meet you and say hello. So please come by and visit us at NGA. We will be there Sunday and Monday.
Okay. And you guys know, if whenever you come to FSGA, they're always there at the state conference, and you can spend time with them, and they'll show you on the screen. But I want to go back to understanding the difficulty of guardianship is the million little pieces of information. I'm going to tell a story because stories tend to work well. We had a client who had 5 husbands, 5 ex-husbands. It's not normal for a software to have enough drop downs for 5 ex-husbands. It's just not typical. So every software has limitations. Some of them have tight limitations. Some of them have less limitations. One of the things that makes them good is they give you enough room to self-determine certain fields, but not too much room to get your fields that you self-determine out of whack because you put them in the wrong place. If you get too many open fields, you might put stuff that we experienced this. And then the other thing about it is guardianship is evolving. And one of the reasons not to do the yellow pad and Excel and QuickBooks is because it's going to continue to evolve. Yesterday, I read the report from the state of Florida's Office of Policy and Procedure Office. They went over what OPP has been doing, Office of Public and Professional Guardian. And there was 2 years ago, 2023, they were supposed to have this whole system set up. It's not done yet. And I'm sure they're going to get pressure, they begin getting pressure to make that system happen. And one of the purposes is to be able to kind of track every professional guardian in the state. Once that happens, I envision there's going to be some form of portal or some form of place that we're supposed to communicate to. Laura will know this. She will be aware of this, and she will have to find ways to make her software play well in that system. Maybe she'll add a report component, or she'll say this is the OPPG report, whatever. She's aware of this, and so that's one of the other reasons to go with a software that is a live, living animal. It's not done. It's never done. It always continues to advance with what's going to happen next. So I'm telling you that as a new guardian, I mean, I know the cost of everything. You say, oh my God, I'm spending more money, but you do need to recognize that the more efficient you are in technology, the better you will be able to grow your business. And if you're not wanting necessarily to hire employees because of the cost and the cash flow and all those things. So that relates, because if you have a system that's pretty tight and you can make it sing and do all the things you need it to do without hiring more staff, well, that's probably what you're looking for. So I want to make sure we've got everything else. So somebody says, we love SEM. Many years later, love it all the time. Good presentation. Thank you, Laura. Thank you, Laura. Laura says, please give us your contact information. $6 per month per client. Can you just invoice the client? Well, that would depend on your court systems. Yep. Some systems allow some counties and circuits allow zero administrative expenses at all. Some are quite willing to understand that this is a business and there should be some administrative expenses. So you can surely put that in as a reoccurring, where you got this expense bulk entry. It's perfect for that. Mm-hmm. You surely could if your circuit allows it and if your cases allow it. We've got another one saying, I've been using SIM for about a year. It's been a lifesaver in my practice. Love the mobile features. Thank you, Laura. Thank you. Thank you. So one more thing I want to do. Okay, guys, I'm taking over the tech. Watch me screw this up. So be patient with me. Oh my goodness, it's working. Oh, I'll just give you my visual for a second just to make you laugh. So this is my spreadsheet I was telling you guys about. Can you see this messy thing? Laura, can you see a spreadsheet?
I can't. Hold on just a second. I'm trying to figure out if it's because...
I don't know if it's me or if it's not showing. It looks on my side, it shows, it says your screen is sharing. Can anybody else answer?
There, now I've got it. Yeah, I had it hidden behind something else because I had my notes up on the screen. So yep, we're good now.
This is what I was reading to you guys. This long list of all the things that I might be able to catch billing in. My Outlook sent, my Outlook inbox, different projects, my Google map, my cell phone history, and I go right down the history. I go right down every call I made and every call I received. So this is how I track to remind myself, did I get everything done? It's just one way to do it. All right, I want to show one more thing.
Just FYI, Teresa,
yeah.
EMS has a checklist feature that would allow you to create something similar inside the system.
So here's what I want to understand. No, I'm glad about that, and I have no doubt that you have much better than what I have created. So the problem I find with daily billing. So now let's get into the nuts and bolts of this. The problem I find with daily billing is I'm having to do everything so many times. So for example, if I did weekly billing, then I am checking my photos 4 times a month versus 30 times a month. Mm-hmm. If I do weekly billing, for example, I check my text messages, my incoming and outgoing calls 4 times a month versus daily. And I struggle with that from an efficiency point of view. Does that mean making sense to you?
It does. So I would ask a couple of questions. My first question would be, remember back when we talked about the 2-minute rule?
Yes.
So you have looked at that text message, you have taken that picture, you have read that email initially. Is there a reason in that moment why you're not recording that? Now I do realize
bad behavior and bad habits. Absolutely.
So that's my first thing, is that that some of what you're doing or being forced to do in order to capture everything. And by the way, the fact that you set up a system to capture it is a good thing, because at least you're not missing. Right. But it's because you're not using the 2-minute rule and you're not dealing with those very quick things at the time that they're happening. Now, there might be 102 reasons why you're not. No. And some of them might be really good reasons.
And the vast majority of the time, I think it's me. I don't think there's real reasons.
So we haven't trained ourselves, and again, preaching to the choir when you tell me that, because I am, if you talk to anyone in my office, they will laugh that I'm the one giving this presentation, because I am the worst in our office about tracking things. And frequently they will come at the end of the day and will be like, did you do this? Did you do? And I'm like, I did all those things. And then, well, you didn't put them in the system. So I'm guilty as charged, but we haven't trained ourselves. We haven't formed the habits. Just like I don't leave my house without brushing my teeth. I really have to form a similar kind of habit that says when I open an email, in addition to the response, I take the 30 seconds that's required to put it in and into my system, into my copy or paste notes. When I take a photo, what am I going to do with that photo? So I do that at that moment. So not that I think it's going to work for everyone to do daily on demand tracking, because some of this is really personality oriented.
Right.
But when you say, I'm so frustrated that I have to go back and do this, I'm saying there's a way to not have to do that.
All right, then I
Now,
need,
it
okay,
may or may
now
not
I
work.
need the second half solution to that then. So for the vast majority, which I think you're factually right, the vast majority of my billing that didn't get done at the time, when the time, because I'm not disciplined, I'm not following my rule, I didn't do the 2-minute rule. Now I need a way to separate those piles, because what happens now is I go through every single dang billing I did, and I realize that I already did that one, already did that one. Oh, I missed this one. So what I need, that spreadsheet helps me know how far I got. Like if I do it by date, which is currently how I do this,
Mm-hmm.
I'll say, okay, I've got up today, I've got up through say October 20th, let's say. Then I know up to the 20th, I build every single thing. But then what'll happen is I'll do what I'm supposed to do on the 21st. I'll build 6 things, miss 4 things. Where's a way to get me dealing with that separation of church and state? Any thought? Because that's where I get into real trouble. And then I say, what's the point of doing this daily? Now I just got to do it weekly. And then I know I left off on the 23rd. I'll do it again on the 25th, and I'll be caught up, but I'm not doing the same repetitive thing as many times with as many, looking at the same billing item again. Am I asking you the same
So
question?
you are asking me a sane question, but I have the feeling that there isn't a good answer for that. The
Okay.
answer is I think you need to choose, and you need to say either I'm going to do it daily, and the consequence of not doing it daily is the discomfort of having to redo it, which will teach me to do it daily, because
Okay.
that's my end result. I want
Okay.
to do it daily.
Yeah.
Or you're going to say, you know what? For me, it just works better to do it weekly, because
Okay.
it does not work in my life to do it daily. And then we're looking for strategies to help you be as efficient as possible weekly.
Okay.
So, I mean,
No, that's good. That's
yeah,
exactly, no. This, one of the things we do in this peer group is we are super candid.
yeah.
I want to ask a question before we go too far. Well, 2 things. Laura, can you put in chat, put all your contact information, because some people need to go, and I want them, you guys will get this presentation. You will get it from Kate. Kate sends it to every person who was on this peer, so don't worry about it. But Laura, go ahead and put it in chat so they can grab it off it. Meanwhile,
Okay.
there's a question from Amanda that says, is there an actual mobile app, or is it still only browser based?
It is browser based.
Browser based. Okay.
Yes.
So for someone who doesn't understand the difference between those 2 things, put it in kindergarten terms and explain me the difference between an app and a browser based.
So an app is something that you would download, and it would be in addition to the EMS application, or it would be another variation of the EMS application. So just like you might have an app for your bank, that is an app you download, you log into that, and then you see things differently than you do when you go to your bank's website. It
Okay.
has slightly different functionality. EMS is instead a browser based. So you're going to use whatever, maybe you have Safari on your iPhone, or maybe you have Google on your phone, or whatever it is. You're going to go in and log into EMS on your phone exactly the same way that you do when you log into your computer.
So
EMS
they
is
look exactly the same.
They look exactly the same. The
Ah,
difference is it is a dynamic application. And what that means is it will adapt as necessary based on the size of the screen that you are viewing. So where things on your laptop or computer are horizontal in nature, you might see things stacking to become vertical in nature when you're on your phone. But without having an app, we don't have any of the costs associated with the app or maintaining the app. We don't have additional places where we have to update and manage that we're managing differently than we do the application itself. And you maintain all functionality. Typically, an app like your bank app, there are things that you cannot do on your app that you can do on your bank's website. So for us, everything is functional. The site is identical in both. And that was a decision made intentionally to maintain the broadest range of functionality and the best upkeep and maintenance. So
Okay,
there's no
got it.
difference between what's happening on your computer and what's happening on your iPhone, tablet, and it could be more than your iPhone, Android, any device with web connectivity that you have a browser, you can get to your EMS. And hold on, because I am trying to put in chat what you wanted me to.
All right,
Just
yeah,
a second.
I mean, you've got it on the last screen, but I just
I
wanted
do.
in chat so people can maybe copy it. And you guys, I promise you, Kate will send you all of this. She always does. She always sends it out to you guys. You'll also get your CE, your one CE. We're way past that time. And if I knew how to stop this recording, will it let me? I don't know how. All right. Okay. So let's see. Is there any, let me check chat. Is there any other questions or comments? You guys, if you want to ask the question, we've got Laura's ear. Go ahead and ask it. Raise your hand. Say you want to talk. Put it in chat. If you want to ask the question, ask it. Charlotte says, love presentation. Okay. That's helpful to her. Good. All right. We still have 47 people on the call. So anybody who wants to say, wait, I do have a question, just get your courage up and ask it. There we go.
Right. So I put my name and then I put the email not just to me, but it's to the entire sales team, since I'm speculating that many of the questions that would come in would be related to sales, pricing, maybe a setup of a demo, that type of thing. So it may be better to connect with the sales team than with me directly. I will be able to have access to that as well, but that way they can get faster results and responses. If somebody is using EMS, they should already know, but EMS support at semapplications.com. That is the support email. So if you're an active user, chances are you have contacted us a zillion times, but there it is for you in case you need it. And
perfect.
Hopefully that is
perfect. Okay, so Laura, we're going to go a little deeper since folks are hanging on. So in guardianship, when you start out by yourself, which is very common for most professional guardians, and then you make the decision to add staff. This is a very dicey situation in lots of the state of Florida because many clerks and courts and judges have not figured out what their position is with the guardian being able to charge for another staff member's time. I had staff for decades, and I used wording like the guardian and staff in all my petitions, all my billing. Every single one of my invoices said guardian and staff because that's how we operated. However, I worked in 7 counties and my billing was not treated the same in every county. One of the reasons, guys, that going with a software like this might be something you want to consider is you will have to move and react with what your clerk changes. So maybe they have an administrative order that just changed the rate to $65 an hour. Well, when you've got a program like this, you call up support and you say, okay, for these 7 clients in this county, I can change this to $65 an hour going back to such and such date. It's made for this. It's made to deal with the fact that you have a moving, changing target. Let's say you do more than guardianship. Let's say you do care management, or you act as a DPOA, or you act as a trustee, or you act as a healthcare surrogate. Programs like this are recognizing the fiduciary, the possible other fiduciary roles, but then you don't have to keep 5 different sets of software because the roles are similar in a lot of ways. They're not the same, but they're similar in a lot of ways. So that is something to consider if you are deciding to do other things other than just guardianship. It was one of the big decisions of why I did the software I did. Same situation. I knew I wouldn't be doing just guardianship because it evolves so quickly. And my recommendation to every guardian is you will likely evolve in, maybe you'll decide to do the examining committee members because it's something needed, your county doesn't have enough of them. Maybe an attorney hires you on a contract basis to meet with their clients after they do an estate planning package and to go be the boots on the ground to walk them through what they're actually, that three ring binder tells them to do at the bank, and the clients are never going to do it without somebody like you walking through it. So the software is not just for one position. It's likely for every position you would be working in this industry. All right, I'm checking chat to see if there's any other questions. Can't believe you guys aren't using this time to ask her a question. We have 45 people still on here. Really? No questions? I'm surprised. You can raise your hand, you can start talking, or you can put it in chat.
I think they must all be sitting back and trying to figure out how they're going to spend their 5 minutes. They're deciding what they're going to schedule. They're figuring out what their habit stacking is going to be, or they're online buying all those books and resources, right?
They're in Audible downloading all those
That's
great
right.
books. That's what they're doing. All right. So, okay. So then let me make sure I haven't missed anybody. Okay. No, I don't have. Just another person said, we love it. Oh, wait, there's one more. There we go. Excellent presentation. We cannot, oh, you cannot unmute? Oh, crap. Thank you, Simone. I didn't know that. Oh, how Kate's gone. Shoot, I don't know how to do it. I'm so sorry. Let me try. Let me, one thing here. I'm so sorry, guys. I don't normally run these because I have no friggin' idea how to do it. Shoot. I don't know how to do it, Simone. I'm sorry. I'll find out before the next meeting because normally Kate stays with me to the end, but she gets off at 4.
Usually there is an option to unmute. It can be associated with the participant's name list.
Like, but I mean, I want to unmute everybody. That's what I want to do. Do you know where to do that?
I don't know if you can unmute all or not, but I do think you can show the participants list and you can all. Click. Okay.
Currently, okay, no. Okay, so get rid of that. Hold on, I'm trying, guys. Ask all to unmute. All right, let's try that. Okay, can you guys unmute?
Yes. Perfect.
Yay! Oh my goodness.
Perfect.
I get.
Well done. Well done.
I'm glad you said that, Simone. Ask your question. Yay!
Thank you very much for this presentation. It's just fabulous. What I would like to know is if we get your system, and I'm notorious for being months and years behind in billing, how would we integrate into the system?
Great question.
So that is a great question. So really, it's something that we can individualize a little bit. So there are several different options. It depends a little bit on how you're tracking and how you're recording your billing now. Is it in a program where it can be imported in? Likely, if you're describing as being months and years behind, probably it's not. And so what I would say is we need to go back to the last billing that you completed, and then we need to enter or key in anything from there forward. So let's say you have client A, and the last time you billed for client A was December of last year. So then how would you go about, where have you written down what you've done for client A so far this year? Because we need to find where that is now, and then we need to determine how we're going to enter that in EMS. We can do that detail oriented, or if you have notes and documentation, we could do it in bulk, possibly, maybe saying, again, it also depends on who you're billing, how much detail you need. So we've got to know quite a bit about how you're doing it now and what you have to be entered before I can tell you the best way to get it in. So we have spreadsheets that can import things. We have manual entry that can be done. We have lots of options, but what are you doing now?
What I was trying to say when I was talking about notes, because you said you can import notes. Notes actually are connected. I have an iPhone and my notes are actually connected to my one email. So it's there for in in forever. In this, I can't get that word out, but it's there forever under the emails, though it's not in an email, it's in the email system. And then I just cut and paste, and that is very laborious. That's what takes the time.
Mm-hmm. So, so what would happen is that you're still going to be, unfortunately, because it's in an email, I would have to see if we have, so
It's not
when
in
we,
the email. Sorry, it's not in the email. It's in the notes.
in the notes.
But notes are actually saved under your email as
Okay.
an under notes.
So, but when you think about how your note is designed, it depends on the formatting of your note. So if you remember when I showed you the EMS note, so you have a date, a category, a description, and a note, and it's an individual entry. So
Mhm.
if I have done 4 different things for client A, I'm going to have 4 different notes under 4 different categories. So in your current notes, are you set up that way? Do you have a date and a note and then a date for the next thing in a note? Or do you have a running note, one note that contains lots of entries in it?
No, each note is individual, but
Okay, that's
receipt and
good.
review of invoice, pay bill, telephone
Okay.
call from attorney. Each one is individual.
Simone, this is actually one of the reasons you use a company like this. This part is where their expertise is unbelievable.
Right, right.
You have your own, system
Yeah,
that you
we all have our own system.
right,
Mm-hmm.
and they know that. And so what
Oh,
they'll help you do is you'll draw the line in the sand for some clients. This will actually force you to clean up stuff that you didn't want to clean up. Honestly, it does. When I did it, it forced me to clean up a lot. And the other thing it will do is you got 2 groupings. You've got the whole billing part, and then you've got the whole case information about the client, about their, all their medical, all their this, all their that. And you'll decide maybe some of them have passed away and you don't need to forward that information necessarily. And that is what they work with you for a long time to get done. It is
okay.
a
That's what
lot of
I
work.
needed to know. Okay, so you would be helpful in that area of how to integrate.
Yes. Yes. So
Okay.
we'll look at what you're doing now, how you're storing it now, what options we have for importing, and then we'll talk about the cost associated with all of the different options as well. So, because at the end of the day, there is a financial consideration as well. We can do some incredibly fancy and sophisticated imports, but those can get very costly. We can do some much more simplistic imports using Excel spreadsheets that are much more cost effective, or the least cost is obviously manual entry on your part. So we can give you some instruction for how to do that. So based on what your budget is, based on where your information is, and the volume of information that you're dealing with, then we can determine the best way to do that. Sometimes we just draw a line in the sand and we say, starting from today, everything goes in EMS, and anything that was prior to today, you're not losing access to your email stored notes. So you're going to refer back to that for prior, and you're going to just move forward from today, because it's just not realistic financially to move that in because of how you're going to use it or not use it. So we evaluate each case individually. And I did see, if you don't mind me answering, Greg had a couple of questions. If you're using Quicken, Excel, Word, so we do have probably the most cost-effective import option is our Excel spreadsheets. And again, I would base this based on volume of data, meaning, numbers of clients and how much information. There is kind of a breaking point where it is probably more cost effective for limited amounts of information to do a manual entry than it is to pay for the import process. But when you have larger amounts of information or more clients, then your time has a value as well, and it may be better to pay out of pocket for the import. So we can talk about what you have, what needs to be imported, and what the costs are. But certainly if it's coming out of a Quicken, an Excel, a Word, export options are broader, and we can get it into our Excel imports, which are already pre-coded, so that drives the cost down a little bit. And then Melinda had a question. Yes, I did say that EMS prints checks as well. It can do checks. It can do ACH files for the bank. So, and there is a full approval process that transaction can go through. So it handles everything on the finance side as well.
And that's the whole point. I'm glad you brought that up. Again, this is back to your one guardian, and you only have, I mean, I know people think we have 24 hours a day, but guardians actually have 32, just so you'll know. So, because that's, we work at 2 o'clock in the morning because like we're insane. But that's the thing. If you can have this many more automated situations, then maybe you don't need to hire a staff person yet because your county's going to give you grief about payroll and you're going to be, being a guardian, payroll is a rough time. It's every 14 days, whether that court order got approved for your fees or not. So you have to be prepared for the cost of that. So yeah, I mean, this is their job. And Simone, that's what they've been doing for years. And they kind of, it's surprisingly how much they know us. It's kind of almost feels like we've been in my office sitting there watching me. I mean, they really understand our behaviors because we're really very similar people. It's funny. But then again, it comes back to the question of cost and your goals and why you want the software, or do you? It's a lot to think about. It's a lot to think about.
Can I just ask one extra question?
Sure.
As far as the input for billing is receipt and review, such and such, but then our notes for the day, do they go into a separate area and they kept separate so it doesn't come up on the billing?
So yes, you enter them on the same screen, but they're housed in different areas, and the reports are geared to only print certain information and to restrict other information. So ultimately, the answer is yes, but it's not, it's going to look like they're the same, but they're not. So, and that's for ease of data entry.
Yeah, it makes it easy because it's on the same screen. Yeah. You're putting in, trips to facility, you're putting in your mileage, you're putting all that in, and then you put your notes all in, but it knows through, and you'll learn what part of the billing words it will take and where the line gets cut. And that becomes, Laura, is your label internal? Is that the label you guys use?
We use public and private, and it's set up initially, but also certain reports very obviously will print case note reports. All of the billing information is set up to pull the description only. What I might suggest, Teresa, if you're okay with it, we do an online web demonstration. So it's about an hour-long tutorial, and it goes through and just kind of shows you key features, lets you ask questions. It's a live presentation. It's every Tuesday morning. I would be more than happy to send you the information so that you could forward that out to everybody, because I think a lot of the questions that we're getting now, and I'm happy to stay on and answer them for as long as people want to ask them, but I think that because we're talking without showing a screen, it's very theoretical, and I think it would be much more helpful to have that presentation. So I'll send that so that you can send that out to everybody. It's every Tuesday, so whatever Tuesday they can make, that way they can get a visual of what the system looks like, what it does, and ask their specific questions.
Perfect. And what we'll do is we will both send it out on the peer Facebook group, and then we'll send it out so people are aware. And remember, catch a Tuesday. You said 10 a.m. Eastern Standard?
10:30.
10:30, sorry. Okay.
And it's 10:30 Central, so that would be 11:30 Eastern. Had to stop and think for just a second. So 11:30.
All right. Perfect. Great. Laura, that's a great suggestion because you had these questions. All right, one more question, and I think we're going to wrap this up. This is coming from Kristen. Is there any chance in the future SEM will be in an application form on our phones? I don't know what that means at all.
So there's not going to be an app, and it's going to remain browser-based, but you can absolutely access EMS from your smartphone, and the system is designed to stack vertically to be viewed more readily or more easily on your smartphone. So you have all of the same features and functionality on your phone as you would if you were in an app, but it's just less update for us to maintain, less cost for us to maintain, so we can keep our rates from rising. That's really what we want to have the best functional application that we can, but we don't want to do things that are not necessary that would require or would incur additional cost to our customers.
Well, the problem
don't anticipate an app, but
they're a constantly moving target. And then you guys, all of a sudden, they'll decide to change something, and you guys, their whole system you can't control it. So I understand completely why you do that.
There are a lot of updates, and they have to be specific to the app, and there are costs associated with handling and managing the app. And so again, to keep our rates manageable and as low as possible, but to continue to give the broadest and widest functionality, we've opted to leave it as a browser-based application. But we did in a revision that we did, it's probably been about 4 or 5 years ago, phone now, we made sure that it had a dynamic response to the size of the screen. So you will see some vertical stacking and some other things. Your menu bar collapses to icons, and there's some different things that happen when you're on a smartphone that make it easier to use. What we've experienced is that people, when they're using their smartphones, are typically using it for looking up contacts, basic client information, or putting in notes, generally speaking. You're not typically writing checks when you're out in the field and that kind of thing, but in truth, you could. And that's been helpful to some folks because, you know, they've been out of the office and had an emergency come up where they had to be able to create a check request, and you can absolutely do that from the field. Oftentimes, applications will have limited functionality because they won't give the full access to the entire system. Your bank website is like that. There are certain things that you can do on your bank app that you can't do, or excuse me, certain things you can do on your bank website that you can't do on your bank app, and we didn't want to get into that scenario. So
Right.
it is browser-based, fully accessible from your phone, and but not expected to be an app, at least not anytime in the near future.
Okay, awesome. All right, quick comments. Number one, if you guys haven't attended GSI, which I don't know how to make the screen do what I want right now. I've got aged showing on the screen. I don't know if you guys can see that. Anyway, GSI is the Guardianship Scene Investigation course that we do in Longwood in person. The next time is January 20th. It's a whole day. It's a really busy day. Laura, you should do it someday when you got nothing better to do with your sanity. It's a physical class where it's essentially, think about it as a scavenger hunt. You get a appointed emergency temporary guardian. You're walking into a 1-1 condominium and you got 60 minutes to figure everything out about this client. And then
how fun.
Oh, it's so fun. It's so fun. And then we go back and we do the reveal and lunch. And then we do it again with the second scenario, totally different story. It's one, this comes from my heart. This is from 30 years of guardianship. And many of these situations in the story actually did for real happen. It is CSI style, so it's a little heavy pressure and fast. But someday come to it. You can find it. I can't get it to show up on my screen. But anyway, it's called GSI. And the next date is January 20th. Big reminder to everyone, please start attending as many of our Zoom roundtables as you can. Those are 3 times a month, 8:30 in the morning on the second Tuesday, 3 p.m. on the third Wednesday, and then 5 p.m. on the last Wednesday of every month. It's just to talk shop. There's no CEs. There's no presenter. We struggle with what we're struggling with. We talk about a client problem. We talk about resources. We share new programs. It's every single month. And this is helping guardianship have a true 24/7 mentoring program. And then we have our Facebook. And our Facebook is a closed loop. Nobody from the community, nobody from the public can join it. It's not networking. It's public and professional guardians and their staff talking about anything that relates to what they're trying to solve in a day. And it's so helpful. It's the goal I've had to have mentoring available to everybody 24/7. And we finally have it because of Aged's funding. So if y'all haven't done it, start attending them, even if you've been around for a long time. Number one, I'd like to have your input. I'd like to have you tell the guardians some of the things that you use. And if you're new, attend so you keep yourself out of trouble. Big warning, there are attorneys who are not good people who will reach out to you and ask you to take cases, and they will not tell you the truth about those cases, and they will not be forthcoming. Talk to another guardian. Come to the Zoom group before you say yes to those cases, please. We get this call every single week. All right, guys, I think that is enough. I'm checking a couple of thank yous. Fabulous. I think we're good. It is, oh my God, 4:52. Laura, thanks for staying so long.
You're welcome. Happy to do it. It's been great to talk to your group. Let me know if you have any questions. I'll send you the information for Tuesday's overviews, and then I'd love to be back and visit with your group again sometime.
We will absolutely do it again. Thank you, Laura. Okay, good night, everybody. Don't worry, Kate will send you all your crap as long as she has your current OPPG number and your current email address. Take care.